Hello, this is Hunter McDermott from anyonecanplayguitar.org with Lesson 5 of Music Theory Basics for Guitar. So in the first lesson we talked about the chromatic scale, which is our musical alphabet. It's kind of learning what letters or notes we have to work with. And then in Lesson 2 we learned about taking those notes and paring them down to a smaller selection, which is called the major scale. So scales and keys are the same thing. If you hear somebody use the word key, something is in a key. That's basically talking about what scale it's called, what scale it's in. Then we looked at this circle of fourths thing here, which gives us a way of organizing all of those major scales or keys into a graph that we can use to quickly learn about what notes are in each scale without having to go through the process of the whole, half thing, even though that is good to know. Finally, and then in the last lesson we talked about how we can take the notes of a chord, or of a scale rather, and make chords out of them. Now there are lots of different types of chords, but we're just going over the three most basic chords that you come across, which are major, minor, and diminished. Now there are all kinds of other chords that are very popular. Major 7, minor 7, dominant 7 is extremely popular, and we'll look at that kind of stuff in later lessons. And you'll see why I chose these three in a moment. Alright, so the next and final step, I think, is to getting to a point where you should have a pretty good understanding of music theory as it pertains directly to the guitar, is to take a scale and to figure out what chords you can play in that scale, all of the chords that are available to you. Now we're not going to talk about literally every chord that's available to you, because that's quite a bit, but we're going to look at the most common ones that you tend to hear in songs. Okay, so we're going to start with a G major scale again. We're going to see what we come up with as we build these triads, these three-note chords, out of the notes of a G major scale. Alright, so the very first step is we need to get the scale, which we have here, and we're going to start by making a triad. So we're going to treat G as if it's the first note of the scale, which it is, and then we're going to take G, B, and D, just like we learned to do over here in the last lesson about the triad creation. Alright, so G, B, and D, we put those three notes together, we get a major chord. And we know it's a major chord because in the last lesson we defined 1, 3, and 5 from a major scale is a major chord. And so there you go. That's the definition of a major chord. Alright, but we can use each of the different notes from this major scale as the root of our chord. So like I was talking about in the last video, the root of a chord is the note, the scale it comes from, and the note that's usually on the bottom pitch-wise. It's usually the lowest note that kind of defines what the chord it's going to sound like. Everything is sort of built up from that root, and that root note gives us lots of information as to where the rest of those notes come from, where they originate. Alright, so we're going to pretend for a moment that A is now our first note of the scale. So we already did G, so we're just going to pretend that's covered up, and we're going to pretend now that A is our first note. And we're going to create a triad starting from A. Alright, so if A is 1, then we'd skip over B and go to C as 3, and then we'd skip over D and go to E as our 5. So we have 1, 3, and 5 starting from A, gives us A, C, and E. Alright, now here is where we really get the culmination of everything we talked about. And it can be very complicated, seeming at first. You might pick up on it quick, and that's great. But if not, just watch the old videos and really make sure you got that kind of stuff down. Ask me any questions if you need to. Alright, so we have an A, C, E, but we have no idea what kind of chord that is. A, C, E, I don't know. Because we already know that A is not the first note of a G scale. So it can't be A major. It might be, I don't know, but we don't know that for sure. So the only way to figure out with a group of notes what kind of chord it is to compare it to its own key. So I'm going to say that again. The only way to figure out the note, what chord a group of notes is to compare it to its own key. And that means not comparing it to the key of G, but comparing it to the key of A. All right, so let's go over here to our circle of fourths, and let's look at the key of A, way over here. All right, key of A has 3 sharps in it, and those 3 sharps are F, C, and G. So if I put them all in alphabetical order, I would have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then back to A. So those are the notes of my A major scale. All right, so let's go back over here, and let's just ask ourselves a few questions and figure out what the answers are. We have A. So the question is A in an A scale? The answer is yes. A is in an A scale. Okay, so that means good. That note is basically a 1. It's the 1, okay. Now, is the note C in a C scale? I mean, is the note C in an A scale? And the answer is no, it's not. Like we just talked about, A has a three sharps in it, one of which is C sharp. That means the note C, C natural, is not in that key. Instead, it's a C sharp, which is a totally different note. All right, so that means that we don't have a regular 3 here, because if we did, it would be a C sharp, but it's not, it's a C. So what's happened is we've taken that C sharp and we've flatted it. So there's that verb form of flat again. We're not necessarily making it a C flat, we are taking a C sharp and we are lowering it by a half a step. We are flatting it, that's what a lot of people will say. Not making it a flat note, we are just lowering it. Sometimes it does become a flat note, but not all the time. So if I take a C sharp and I flat it, or lower it by a half step, I get C, which means that we have not a regular 5, or not a regular 3, but a flat 3. So it's looking like it's not major. It might be minor, and it might be diminished. We don't know quite yet, but we have an inkling that it's not major. All right, so then you check the last note. Is the note E in an A scale? The answer is yeah. It's not one of the sharps, so it's natural by default. All right, so that means that we have a 1, we have a flat 3, and we have a 5, which gives us a minor chord, A minor. We'll do a few more. We'll do all of them, in fact. All right, so what this means to us is that if I'm playing a G major chord, and then I follow that up by playing an A minor chord, it's going to sound really good, because both of those chords fit into the key of G, or a G major scale. They both come from the same scale. They all fit together. So you can play A minor, you can play G, play them backwards, forwards, whatever you want to do in any order, and they're going to sound really great because they all come from the same place. All right, so let's go to the next triad. So we started with G, then we did A. All right, now we're going to consider B to be our first note. So we're going to cover up G and A, and we're going to think of B as number 1 right now. All right, so our triad would be B, D, F sharp. Those are the 3 notes we need. But to figure out what kind of chord it is, we're not going to look at the key of G, because even though that's where we got the notes, we're not going to compare it to the key of G to figure out what kind of chord it is. We're going to compare it to the key of B, because B is the root. So that's what we need to compare it to, the key of B, not to the key of G, because that won't help us. All right, so we're looking at the key of B over here. Now the key of B has 5 sharps in it. It's a lot of sharps. So we have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. Basically everything is sharp except for B and E. All right, so back over here. We ask ourselves those same questions. Is B in a B scale? Absolutely, it's the root. Is D in a B scale? Nope, because we just found out that we need a D sharp, but we don't have a D sharp, we have a D. So that tells us that our third is flat. So we have the same situation we just had. It's looking like it's either a minor or a diminished chord. All right, so go to the third one. F sharp, is F sharp in a B scale? Yes, it is, because again, it's one of the sharp notes that's in that scale. So that means we have a 1, a flat 3, and a 5, which gives us minor. All right, and what that means for us is that we can play a G major and a B minor together, back to back, and they're going to sound great. We can throw the A minor in there too. We can put them in whatever order we want, and they're going to sound fantastic. All right, let's keep going. Let's speed through these last few now that we hopefully have a better idea of how it works. So we're going to now go to the C note, and we're going to go 1, 3, and 5, considering C to be 1. So that's C, E, and G. All right, so we compare C, E, and G to what scale? C. We compare it to the key of C because C is our root. It is our 1 over here. All right, and the key of C is really easy because it has no sharps or no flats in it. So I look at those and I go, is C and C? Yeah. Is E and E? Is E and C? Yes. Is G and C? Yes. Which means none of the notes were flatted or changed in any way. They were just 1, 3, 5, which gives us a major chord. Cool, with me so far? All right, next one. D, F sharp, and we end up with a blank space here. So what we do is we consider G to be 1, same like as over here. And so after G would be A and B and C and D and E and F sharp. And so the scale is considered to just go on as long as you need it to go. So after G, you just go back to A and then B and then keep on going. So our fifth would be D, F sharp, and then A. We have an A. So D, F sharp, A. All right, then we're going to compare this to a D scale. D has 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So D is in a D scale, F sharp is in a D scale, and A is in a D scale. So that gives us another major chord. Now again, the reason why I know that A is part of a D scale is because it's not one of the sharps. I know that F sharp, or F is sharp and C is sharp, but all the rest of them by default are going to be natural. So whatever is not flatted in a scale or not sharped in a scale is just going to be natural. So you can pretty quickly figure out beyond those sharps and flats what other notes are going to be in the scale, because it's just whatever the natural notes are that are left. All right, so now we're moving on. 2 more. We have E, G, and then we'd skip over this imaginary A and go on to B. So we have E, G, and B. And we're going to compare this to an E scale over here. Don't get confused with E flat. It's got to be just plain old E. All right, so E has 4 sharps. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, which means all the rest of the notes are going to be natural by default. So, is E in E? Yes. Is G in E? No, because it was one of the 4 sharps that we needed. There it is there. And so that means we have a flat third, flat 3, and then we have a B. Is B in an E scale? Yes, it is. All right, so that gives us an E minor chord. All right, last one. We go to F sharp. We would get F sharp, then we go A, and then we'd skip over the B, and we'd get to C. So we have F sharp, A, and C. All right, comparing this to our F sharp scale. F sharp has 6 sharps in it. That's almost every single note except for B. So everything should be sharp except for a B, which would be natural. All right, so F sharp, yes, that's in an F sharp scale. Is A? No, because that should be sharp. Is C? Also no, because that should be sharp. So what we have is a flat 3 and we have a flat 5, which gives us that third type of chord there, which is the diminished chord. All right. This is known as, all of this is known as a chord scale. So it's like we took the key of G, the G major scale, and we said, all right, what chords can we play in this key that are all going to sound really nice together? And we did that. We started on each different note. We built a triad by pretending it was 1 and going 1, 3, 5 from each of the different positions. And then we compared that group of notes that we got to its own major scale. So if A was our root, we compared it to A. If D was our root, we would compare it to D, and so on. And by comparing it to its key, we determined what kind of chord it was. Now here's the nice thing about it, and this may even save you from having to do this period, is that this portion of the equation here, all of this, is the same for every major key. So what that means is, if you go to the key of C, for example, the first chord in the key will be major, so C major. The second chord will be minor, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. So the order in which the chords are arranged is always the same. You ever heard anybody say they're playing a 1, 4, 5 chord progression? Then what they're talking about is they're playing the 3 major chords. They're playing the 1, which is always major, the 4, which is always major, and the 5, which is always major. Or like 1, 6, 2, 5 is used a lot in jazz. So you'd have major and then minor and then major and then minor. Or I'm sorry, major, minor, minor, major. Alright, so let me play you a G major chord scale, and just want you to listen to how all those notes sound really nice together. Alright, so here's the G major scale by itself. We have now anybody's, whether you've played music before or not, probably has heard that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and so on. That's our G major scale. That's these notes up here. Now if I take each of those notes and I make a chord, then I'd get G major, A minor, B minor, C, D, E, and then F sharp diminished. Alright, so now I don't have this planned. I'm just going to hit a bunch of random chords, or I'm going to hit all these chords in just a kind of a random order, and just see what it sounds like. You know, it doesn't matter. You can put them in whatever order you want, and it's going to sound fantastic because they all go together. They're complementary chords. You can think of them that way. So, in summation of all 5 of these lessons, what I want you to be able to do, what I think is valuable for all musicians to do, but specifically geared toward guitarists, is to understand the concept of a key, which is code name for a major scale, to understand. So say somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, I got this idea for a song, here's this thing, it's in the key of D. Then you need to know, I believe it's helpful for you to know instantly, boom, the key of D has 2 sharps. What are the sharps? They're F sharp and C sharp. So I can go in my head, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. I know all the notes, and I can play them on my guitar, which will be maybe another lesson. We'll talk about how to actually play some of this stuff. And then to instantly know that I got a D major, an E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, F sharp minor, and G sharp diminished. Those are the chords, the major, minor, and diminished chords that I can play in that key. Then I guarantee you'll be an extremely powerful and creative guitar player. You'll have just that much more than the average person knows about music, which will make you an asset, I think, in any musical situation. Having an understanding of how to communicate musically is extremely useful and fun. You know, creates a sense of freedom, sort of. When you understand what the rules are, then you can follow them when you want, and then later on we can learn how to kind of break the rules in certain ways that makes music a little bit more interesting. And I think that's a good way to go. Learn the rules, then learn how to break them. And that's about it. So, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for me. Please make sure you watch all 5 videos. Each one is building on what we learned in the one before, so make sure you watch them in order. And subscribe to my channel, and have some more videos and stuff up soon. Thanks again for watching. I'm Hunter from anyonecanplayguitar.org. Have a great day.